What's up, Planeteers? Today we are going to discuss about veto, the biggest blot on democracy. Watch this video till the end, and I will discuss a way how this can be removed, what role India has to play, and also the new issues that will come up once veto is removed. Don't you think that the structure of Security Council and General Assembly is a modern reinterpretation of kings and commoners and that concept? And there is a good reason I say that. Security Council controls the UN peacekeeping force and only it can deploy it. Security Council can remove any member of the General Assembly, of course based on voting, but there is no procedure mentioned in the UN Charter to remove any permanent members. And there's a whole list of other powers, but the most important and the topic of today is veto, the infinity gauntlet of our times, giving 5 countries the power to decide the fate of the rest of the world. One look at the Security Council and you can clearly see factions there. And veto has been repeatedly used as more of an ego boost by countries to counter decisions supported by rivals than actually do any good. Any resolution that wishes to achieve any good needs to massage the ego of both the sides, which never gets satisfied and eventually gets dumped. This is the reason why Libya happened, Afghanistan happened, Syria happened, and Ukraine is happening. The question then is how did it get included in the first place? And why did members agree to it? One word answer: blackmail, sheer blackmail. The world was in chaos post the Second World War. So many new countries had gained freedom, and everybody wanted order and protection, and only a handful of countries could promise that. And hence, there was sheer blackmail and bullying by the Big Five. The Big Five was adamant that there would be no United Nations if they were not given the veto. The issue was made crystal clear by the leaders of the Big Five. It was either the charter with the veto or no charter at all. Harry S. Truman, who became the President of the United States in April 1945, wrote, and I quote, "All our experts, civil and military, favored it, and without such a veto, no arrangement would have passed the Senate." Senator Connolly from the US delegation dramatically tore up a copy of the charter during one of his speeches and threatened all of the small states that they would be guilty of that same if they opposed the principle of unanimity. His words, and I quote, "You may, if you wish," he said, "go home from this conference and say that you have defeated the veto, but what will be your answer when you are asked where is the charter?" And since then, US has multiple times traded freedom for oil. China has openly followed, which can only be described as one world, one China policy by claiming its right to every piece of land in the world. And Russia has since then used it to deliberately revive the Soviet Union. And the worst part out of all of this is that any resolution, any move to remove the veto would first be subject to veto, and any member can abuse its power to stop it, and this becomes a vicious cycle. Is all hope lost? Lost? And is there no way around this? See, I am no expert at this, but how I see the world around us and the world order currently, there is only one country that can do anything about it, and that is India. And I'm not saying that because I'm Indian or something, but I have good reasons why I say that. It is one of the few countries that has stable relations with both Russia and USA, the leaders of the two factions. It has previously, during the non aligned movement, stood up against the two countries during the Cold War and defied them and united small countries to act independently. It is the world's largest democracy, and nothing can beat that. That is the underlining thing. It is the world's largest democracy with 16% of the world population, and keeping it out of the permanent group of the Security Council is increasingly becoming difficult. Does this mean India will get veto? I don't think so. That won't happen. So, what are we here for? See, the only way left now is to completely remove veto. And this will require some drastic measures that will temporarily threaten the foundations of the United Nations organization. This is how I think it could work out. Again, not an expert, just sharing my thoughts. If anybody has studied change management, they know that the first step for any major change to be implemented is to create urgency, which means India has to make this the pressing issue by continuously putting this forward. The voice regarding this is already rising. Recently, India called for the UN Security Council reform this year, and it said, and I quote, "It is ironical that calls for democracy and the rule of law are being made in a council that itself embodies the undemocratic stranglehold of the privileges of a few, forged by a wartime alliance that no longer exists." Savage words. And on April 26, 2022, a new resolution to mandate debate on veto was adopted and supported by 83 member states and 3 permanent members. So we have the numbers and it's time to put it to use. Of course, there will be veto on any move that is made to dilute and eventually remove veto. But this has been countered earlier and it has already been done to counter China's veto. During that time, its representatives used the veto only once to block Mongolia's application for membership in 1955 because the ROC considered the entirety of Mongolia to be part of China. This postponed the admission of Mongolia until 1961 when Soviet Union announced that it would block all further admissions of new members unless Mongolia was admitted. Faced with this pressure, the Republic of China relented under protest. And something similar would have to be done now to get out of the situation. For this, we need to pull out a leaf out of Mahatma Gandhi's book of How to Cause Reforms. We Indians call him Bapu, or father of the nation, and he was adept at annoying and pissing you to the limit, peacefully I must say, that out of mere irritation you will surrender. And this method is called civil disobedience, aided by the non-corporation movement, which would mean disrupt the working of the UN peacefully, which means India has to walk out of the UN along with all supportive member states. I know it's a very drastic measure, extremely drastic, but this has to be done, but peacefully. This is important because if not done peacefully, it takes away the credibility of the move. India alone, as I mentioned earlier, is 16% of the world's population, and a UN without the world's largest democracy has no substance. I'm not sure how many other members will join initially, but somebody has to start, and others will follow. Next step is to gain small wins. Because money and trade is where you can hit hard. And imagine if countries stop following UN established regulations and start open trade. There's meant to be chaos in the UN, as the remaining members would want everyone to play by the same rules. I don't actually support this move, and I hope it doesn't come to this. But even if it's done, it should be, as I mentioned, small wins, and only for demonstration purpose only. Veto is something for a better future, but not at the cost of today. And that always has to be kept in mind. By this time, there will be commotion in the Security Council, and they will try to make a desperate move to weaken this movement and maintain their position, which would mean that they will, at some point of time, offer veto to India. There already has been noise around this, and this will serve the Security Council three purposes. First, they will retain their veto. Nothing has changed. They only get an extra member with veto. It weakens the protest, because if you take away the world's largest democracy, there's not much left in the protest anyway. And it will also show, certainly, that it was also greed for India and not the moral principles. This is going to be the major test for India, and it's a very alluring option. But this is an opportunity for India to prove its credibility as the world leader and show how it's different than the previous ones. And by denying physical power in the form of veto, it can gain a lot of soft power. And hopefully this denial will serve as a last nail in the coffin. Mind you, we don't have to go back to UN until our needs are fulfilled, until what we ask is given to us. And once that is done, holding veto in an organization that has no control over the world would be wasteless, and which could result in an isolation and even segregation. This is not going to be as simple as I proposed. It is a very, 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 very layman framework, prone to many inaccuracies. I don't claim to be an expert, but what I wanted to highlight is a principle that could work. Of course, there are experts out there who can judge this and decide what's better. I just want to start a chain of thought around the world because this needs to change. This stench of autocratic behavior in our times needs to go away. But there is going to be a major problem regarding this. Even if UN agrees to get rid of veto, there is going to be a new threat that will come up, the post veto scenario. So, if veto is gone and everybody gets the same vote, this is also going to be a major bone of contention. Because in countries like China and India, that comprise of 1/3 of world's population, will only have two votes, or in other words, 1.3 billion people together get one vote. So do 825 members of the Vatican City. They also get one vote, and there's a difference that will be a bone of contention, as I mentioned earlier. The solution to this is obviously weighted votes based on size. The criteria has to be discussed, it has to be agreed by everybody. And but this is something which is common in some countries. Like for example in India, all states do not get equal votes in the parliament. Larger states have more seats where elections are contested than small states. For example, Uttar Pradesh, which is one of the biggest states in India, gets 80 seats in the parliament, while Goa, which is the smallest state, gets only 2 seats. But the point is, will countries agree to it? Because rivals of China, which are significant in numbers, would all want power equal as compared to China. And this is going to be a major point of debate and how the world agrees to come to a conclusion. What do you think? What is better? The current status of sucking up to 5 countries, is that good? Where we ask permission from them for every decision? Or should veto be removed? And if it is removed, how should the post veto power distribution be like? What are your opinions? I would really want to listen to them and have a discussion on the comment section because I really think this is a pressing issue and power needs to be equally divided and more. See, if you look at the distribution, there's no country from Africa or South America that gets a veto, and their needs and their requirements nobody cares for. And eventually, this affects us all. If we need to make a better tomorrow, it's high time the world at one for once in its lifetime start acting as one world. So comment below, and I would like to hear from you what exactly is your thought on this. And if you like this content, please press the subscribe button. It gives me immense motivation because there is so much more content coming through that will not only give you food for thought but will force you to commit gluttony. Live long and prosper.